Coming to our next chapter, detoxification. So here generally we will take, there are some toxic compound produced in our body, and accidentally we will take some toxic compounds in the foods and other ways. So whatever the toxic compound they enters into our body or produced in our body is converted into a less toxic compound and is excreted from the body, right? So this mechanism of conversion of a toxic compound into less toxic or non-toxic, and it is converted into a form that can be easily excreted from the body, is called as detoxification. So detoxification can be defined as series of reactions which are converting toxic compound into less toxic or non-toxic and water soluble compound so that it can be easily excreted from the body. So this mechanism is called as detoxification. So we are converting a toxic compound into less toxic compound. So where this mechanism occurs, this detoxification mainly occurs in the liver, right? Coming to mechanism of detoxification. So these toxic compounds, they are processed in two phases. So the toxic compound undergoes detoxification in two phases, phase 1 and phase 2 reactions. So these two reactions, phase 1 and phase 2 reactions, involved in the conversion of toxic compound to less toxic compound. Coming to what are phase 1 reactions. What happens in phase 1 reactions? So generally in phase 1 reactions, to the toxic compound one functional group is added. It may be a hydroxyl group, it may be a carboxylic group, right? So it may undergo reduction, it may undergo oxidation, it may undergo hydroxylation. So whatever it may be, in the phase 1 reactions, the toxic compound is modified by adding a functional group. So that is what happening in the phase 1 reactions. The important phase 1 reactions are oxidation. So in oxidation, ethanol, for example, you take ethanol is converted into acetic acid, right? So that is how ethanol in our body is detoxified to acetic acid. In the same way, benzaldehyde is converted to benzoic acid. So these are the oxidation reactions. Coming to another reaction of phase 1 is reduction. So here reduction of the toxic compound occurs, right? So when you take chloral, it undergoes reduction and is converted to trichloroethanol, right? So chloral to trichloroethanol this conversion is nothing but reduction of the toxic compound by phase 1 reactions. In the same way, another most important type of reaction in phase 1 is hydrolysis. So here, using the water molecule, you are breaking the bonds in case of toxic compounds. So this type of mechanism we call it as hydrolysis. And here, acetyl salicylic acid, aspirin, which is used as a analgesic, antipyretic and anti-atherogenic drug. So this drug has acetyl salicylic acid. Its composition is acetyl salicylic acid, and this drug is hydrolyzed, detoxified by a mechanism called as hydrolysis. And here by hydrolysis, acetyl salicylic acid is converted to salicylic acid and acetic acid, right? So this is how salicylic acid or acetyl salicylic acid, nothing but aspirin, is detoxified in our body by a process called as hydrolysis. So those are the three important reactions in the phase 1, that is, so when you see, those are oxidation, reduction and hydrolysis. So what happens in phase 1? You are modifying a toxic compound by adding a functional group. So that is what basically happens in the phase 1 reactions of detoxification, right? Coming to phase 2 reactions. What happens in phase 2 reactions? In phase 2 reactions, whatever the compound which is produced in the phase 1, modified in the phase 1, is now subjected to, now it enters into the phase 2 reactions. So that phase 1 metabolite, we call it as phase 1 metabolite, is subjected to conjugation. So what is conjugation? So that phase 1 metabolite reacts with a compound produced in our body, right? So that reaction, we call it as conjugating. So we are conjugating, we are combining that phase 1 metabolite with a compound. So this mechanism is called as conjugation. So that conjugating agent, whatever the molecule which is involved in the conjugation, so we call it as conjugating agent. So this conjugation is the phase 2 reaction, and by this phase 2 reaction conjugation, that toxic compound will be detoxified and will be converted into a more water soluble form and less toxic form. Yeah. So for the conjugation we have different agents, we call them as conjugating agents like glucuronic acid, glutathione, cysteine, sulfate, acetyl group or acetic acid, methyl group. Right. So like this we have different conjugating agents. Coming to glucuronic acid. So glucuronic acid is produced in our body from glucose by a pathway called as uronic acid pathway. And the significance of glucuronic acid is it is involved in the conjugation reactions. The most important phase 2 conjugating agent, the most important agent in the conjugation is glucuronic acid. So for example, when you take bilirubin, which is produced from the metabolism in the heme catabolism, that heme degradation, that bilirubin binds with the glucuronic acid. So when glucuronic acid binds with the bilirubin, it makes the bilirubin soluble. So bilirubin is converted into a water soluble compound when it binds with the glucuronic acid. Right? So bilirubin concentration, when it is increased in blood, it leads to hyperbilirubinemia, and that results in jaundice. So in order to prevent that, we have to eliminate that toxic compound bilirubin from the body. For that we require the conjugating agent glucuronic acid. So glucuronic acid reacts with bilirubin and forms bilirubin diglucuronide. So actually bilirubin is insoluble in water, but when it reacts with glucuronic acid and it's converted into bilirubin diglucuronide form, then solubility of bilirubin increases. So that is now soluble. So insoluble compound is converted to soluble compound, so that can be easily excreted from the body. So that is the significance of glucuronic acid. The most important conjugating agent in our body is glucuronic acid, and that too it conjugates the bilirubin. Coming to glycine. So glycine also acts as the simplest amino acid is glycine. So this glycine also acts as a conjugating agent. So this glycine reacts with benzoyl-CoA and converts that into euphoric acid, and that is excreted from the body. Right. And coming to cysteine, which is present in the glutathione. So glutathione and cysteine together they act as the conjugating agents. So the active form of cysteine in which it acts as a conjugating agent is glutathione. So glutathione has 3 amino acids like glutamate, cysteine and glycine. So that cysteine part of glutathione has the conjugating function. It has a role in detoxification by conjugation. So cysteine reacts with the toxic compounds and converts them into a mercapturic acid, so that can be easily excreted from the body. So that is the role of cysteine and glutathione in detoxification. Like sulfate. So the active form of sulfate is phosphoadenosyl phosphosulfate. So in short we call it as PAPS. So phosphoadenosyl phosphosulfate, the active form of sulfate, is involved in the conjugation reactions. So that PAPS, the active form of sulfate, donates sulfates to the toxic compound so that it will convert into a less toxic compound. For example, when you take phenols, so phenyl sulfate. So when it is converted to phenyl sulfate, the solubility of phenol is increased. So that is the significance of sulfate in the conjugation. So like that we have S-adenosyl methionine. So the active form of methionine is S-adenosyl methionine, and this donates the methyl groups to the toxic compounds. By this mechanism, this S-adenosyl methionine is involved in detoxification reactions. Coming to acetic acid, the active form of acetic acid is acetyl-CoA. So this active form of acetic acid is also involved in the detoxification reactions by conjugation. For example, if when you take the tuberculosis drug isoniazid, that isoniazid reacts with acetic acid and that is converted to acetyl isoniazid, acetylated isoniazid, and that is the less toxic compound and easily excreted from the body. So these are the different conjugating agents, and the function of all these conjugating agents is they convert the toxic compound into more water soluble compound. Right? So toxic compound may enter directly into the phase 2 reactions, otherwise it may be processed in the phase 1, and that phase 1 metabolite is subjected to further processing in the phase 2 reactions. And the most important reaction in phase 2 detoxification is conjugation. So this is how the toxic compounds which are produced in our body, and whatever you take in the diet accidentally, those are converted into less toxic and more water soluble compounds by these mechanisms. So we discussed about what is detoxification, what are the phases involved in the detoxification, and what are conjugating agents which are involved in the main type of or major type of detoxification process in the phase 2 reactions. Thank you.